Hi, so I'm Amy from Select Travel Holidays, home of Cruise Select, and I'm here with Andy Harmer, who is the director of CLIA UK and Ireland. Thank you so much for joining us and for your time, Andy. But first, could you explain a little about CLIA and what it involves and how you came to work for CLIA?
Yeah, interesting question. So CLIA is Cruise Lines International Association. So we are a combination of about 50 different cruise lines, both ocean cruise lines and river cruise operators. And our membership includes travel agents across the world as well. And so what we try to do is bring the whole cruise community together. So our kind of reason for being is that we play that role of introducing people, of letting people network, and of course we talk a lot about the opportunities in cruise and how great cruise holidays are and all of that positive stuff, which sometimes is difficult in a year like this year when there's not been very much positive news, but this year our role has changed slightly.
Yeah, this year should have been so exciting. There should have been like a whole raft of new ships that, I mean, you and I got to see a couple of them at, pre-lockdown, which was so, amazing. But I think a lot of those sort of celebrations will be sort of postponed for another year until they can really, But
yeah, well, I think the exciting thing is that those ships are still new and still around, and I think the order book, so the shipyards are still busy making new ships for entry into service. So I think the opportunities ahead are still great.
Yeah, and we have had some, even during lockdown, we have had some exciting news, like, Swan Hellenic, Fred's new ships. Ships are still taking delivery. So, like you say, there is still something to look forward to. We've got a lot of time to make up for.
Well, indeed. And I think, like many people, I think we're all missing cruise. Those people who've cruised before, of course, know how great a cruise holiday is. But for those people, particularly, probably, they're desperate to get back on board. I know I am. I'm desperate to be on a ship and explore and relax and enjoy the facilities on board. I'm sure you are too.
Yeah, and I'm running out of, like, all the little toiletries I've sort of taken on board. Over the years.
I can neither condone nor criticize that, but yeah, I think we've missed travel this year. We've missed holidays and we've missed cruising.
Yeah, definitely. So you said it's a little bit different this year for you. So could you give our viewers a brief insight into some of the work you've been doing recently? I believe you've even been working with the government on the COVID protocols, which were recently released for cruising.
Yeah, and I think, as I said at the beginning, I think, one of our roles at CLIA is to bring people together. And normally that's kind of bringing together cruise lines and travel agents and ports, etc. But this year has been different in that we've really brought together the cruise community and experts from cruise to talk to government. Because I think, obviously, we, as an industry, we voluntarily suspended operations very early on this year. And we've used that kind of time to work on protocols, to work on what resumption of cruising would look like. And then next to that has been the opportunity to work with government. So, so the government understands the steps that we already take. We already, for example, have medical facilities on all of our ships. We already do pre-screening. We already, lots of hand sanitizers everywhere whenever you go into a restaurant, etc. So we already did lots of that. And so it's important for government to understand that. And then I think we've tried to work with government in a collaborative way to work with them on what resumption would look like. So there's lots of great work like that happening around the world, whether in Europe or in North America or in Australasia, for example. But we kind of brought that international aspect together, and we worked with the British government, who has in some cases some slightly different regulations that we needed to include in the UK document. So it's been a challenging year in terms of what's been happening with the cruise industry, but actually what it has allowed us to do is really focus as an industry on ensuring that we take this collaborative approach, and that when we return to service we do so safely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the beauty of CLIA, and it's really sort of come into its own, that you've been collaborating as an industry, working as one voice for years, and it's really it's good that we had that in place already, and it really has sort of been a blessing. It's a complicated process, like you said. There's different you know, regulations that you need to sort of abide by and, you know, work through and everything. It's just, wow, well done, Andy. Thank you for your hard work on this.
Well, I'm very lucky, and I think as an industry we're very lucky that there are some incredibly intelligent people who work in our industry who understand the operational aspect, who understand public health, who understand the you know, what the crew need to do, and crew training even before we get them back on board. So and cruise is slightly complicated, you know. We visit lots of different places. We have entertainment venues, we have dining venues, we have sleeping accommodation, so we are slightly complicated. So but I think, you know, like many industries and like most people, we are adjusting to what is everyday life now for everybody. So I think personally we've all seen that change in the way in which we've lived our year, and I think as businesses and as an industry we've had to do the same.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, could you just give like a brief overview of some of the protocols that you think will perhaps change people's crew? So we've had a few questions from our clients that I've been asking to some of the, you know, cruise lines. I've been on the various panels in our virtual cruise festival, and obviously, as I'm sure you can imagine, most of the clients' questions have been, I would say, about how the new COVID measures or social distancing will impact on their cruise experience. And I know also from what the cruise lines have sort of answered that basically there's a balance of, you want, you know, health and safety is always super important, but also you want to make sure you can still deliver that quality of cruising that people are used to and that they sort of expect and they want. And I know, for example, Hazel said that for her, the attraction of cruising on particular cruise lines is striking up conversations and often making new friends in restaurants. And she's worried that social distancing would, you know, impact that negatively. I guess we have sort of got used to that a bit more with our masks. We have found ourselves a bit more adaptable than we'd expect. But obviously there's a lot of people who are, you know, perhaps a bit more belt and brace sort of approach to it. They want to make sure that all the precautions are being taken. So John, for example, asked about the extra precautions that are taken both on the ships at ports and on the excursions at destinations. And I know there's a lot of, you've said there's a lot to be considered. So how big an impact would you say that once cruising can get properly restarted, would these measures have on the enjoyment of cruising?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a really important question. I think first and foremost, you know, people want to have an enjoyable cruise holiday when the time comes and when the time is right, and absolutely, it is a consideration by many people who want to take a holiday. You're right also that we have adjusted. We are amazingly adjusted. Here we are in November, and we're used to wearing face coverings. We're used to social distance measures, etc. I think, you know, cruise has a few advantages. So firstly, for example, the mandatory testing of all guests and crew before embarkation to make sure that we reduce those risks, that we mitigate those risks of infection. And it will be part of a number of measures that you've mentioned and is within our framework document. But we're sociable creatures, and I think that there is very much the need to ensure that we deliver great holidays, but we do so in a safe way. So things may, if the other kind of bit to say to that, the other caveat, I guess, is that there's no UK cruising at the moment. So things are still changing, things are still evolving. So when resumption does start, as you say, when a large number of ships restart, and that includes the UK, then by then technology may have changed, the scientific advice may have changed, the medical advice may change. So we shouldn't take this kind of moment to say, well, this is exactly what cruising will look like. But I'm given great hope and optimism by some of the resumption of cruising that has happened. So there is cruising operating in the Mediterranean, in parts of Europe, for example, where the guests are having a great holiday, and of course they're doing so safely, both them and the crew and the places that they visit. So cruising may feel slightly different, but I think that every effort will be made to make sure it's a great holiday. But behind the scenes, or indeed, you know, straight in front of people, will be that need to keep people safe and to reduce those risks of infection. So, but as you say, we have adjusted. You know, the measures that the cruise industry is taking go well above and beyond any other measures that are taken in hospitality or in other parts of the travel industry, including that mandatory testing. But also, you know, we've taken a long time. We did the right thing by voluntarily suspending operations earlier in the year. We've taken this time to really look at what we can do to keep our guests and our crew safe.
Excellent, thank you. I mean, I think from the resumptions we have seen, you said they've been really successful. I think perhaps the biggest change has been that passengers haven't really been able to go ashore independently, but that's not going to be a permanent change. That's just a way in which that this, you know, that these particular cruise lines can still deliver, you know, a cruise to people, but in a way that's safe. They can do it in a bubble, so to speak. And
yeah, and I think it speaks to the fact that things are going to change and develop as testing changes. You know, we're seeing lots of changes even in the way that people are tested, and the way in which people are tested. For example, I think the use of face coverings will change. I think all of these things are kind of changing and evolving as we speak. But you know, again, the cruise industry is very much plugged into working with health authorities and experts in this area to make sure that the right processes are in place at the right time. But you know, we continue. It's an evolving situation, so we continue to monitor them very closely.
Yeah, of course. And I guess during this pause, cruise lines have had the time to perhaps put in infrastructures to improve the, you know, hygiene and sanitation, although it's always been very high, very, you know, very safe in cruising. I know it's not inevitable that, sorry, it's not that they wouldn't be cases of, you know, sometimes there are, you know, norovirus, etc. But generally speaking, you know, cruising has always had very excellent sanitation and hygiene. But I suppose all these months with these ships not having anyone on board, they could actually enhance those sort of infrastructure on place, can't they? So
yeah, well, you know, with modern cruising has been around for what, 50 odd years, and I think that we've looked after public health in those 50 years, and we will continue to do so. But I think and that resumption of cruising that we've seen in Europe being successful gives us the optimism and the knowledge that we can resume cruising when the time is right. And you know, of course, there are other factors at play, and but we also acknowledge that we need to, and what we have been doing is working with ports, with port health, with health authorities, with government that we mentioned early on. We've also been looking at international comparisons as well. But so I think that the huge amount of work that's gone into it will you know, bodes well for the resumption to happen.
Yeah. So what do you think and this is going to be a really tricky question, I do apologize.
Oh no.
What do you think you perhaps miss most of all about cruising? Is there something that you're really looking forward to most of all when you can return?
Do you know, I think the thing that I love, I'm lucky, I work in an industry that I love, and I love the people in it. I love the community feel of cruising, not just amongst travel agents and the cruise lines, but also when you meet guests who have started cruising and become addicted is probably the wrong word, but they certainly like to take cruising time and time again, and that's lovely to hear. And I love hearing people's stories, because there's two things I really love about cruising. One is that every cruise is different, and that's because it's a different ship, or it's a different itinerary, or you're with different people, or there's a different feel and ambience on board. So I love that about cruising. The other bit I really love is waking up in the morning and thinking, where are we today? Yeah. Because that's something you don't get with any other holiday type. And I love the ships. I love being on the ships. I even often stay on board the ship when we're in a port of call, so that I can enjoy the ship with less guests on board, for example. But I also love getting off and exploring new places and visiting new things and seeing and trying to soak up some of that culture. I think that's amazing. Yeah. I miss that feeling when you're on board and kind of feel at home, because you know, you just feel so welcome, so embraced, but you also have the luxury of not having to do the washing up and cooking for yourself. Well, you know, and that is lovely. It is lovely. But the crew on our ships, regarded, every ship, every day, every cruise line, the crew are incredible and they do an amazing job. And I think that goes to your point you were saying about feeling at home and feeling welcome. The crew are just incredible and they do an amazing job, and they do make a huge difference actually. And you kind of build up a rapport with the crew in a way that you don't on other holiday types, because you get used to the people that come into your room, you get used to the people who serve you at the bar or at the restaurant, or they do an incredible job. And I think much of the crew's joy comes from talking to the crew, particularly when they give you little and particularly in the evening, you can have a chat to the waiter or the wine waiter or the waitress or whoever, and you talk about the next port of call, and you get the little tips about where to go or things to see and things like that. I think that all adds to that joy, the joy of cruising.
Yeah, I mean, okay, again, this is going to be another tricky, because I'm sure you've got an abundance, but could you share one or two of your favorite cruising experiences with us?
Oh, good Lord. There are so many, and you know this. There are so many. Too many, good Lord. I think I don't think I'll ever forget my first cruise. I took a cruise up. My first cruise was Alaska, and I just thought that was an incredible place to take a cruise holiday. It's probably the only way that you should explore Alaska, because it's so easy, and but the scenery and the wildlife and the whole experience of being in Alaska was incredible. I loved that. I also loved, I did an expedition cruise a number of years ago, and we went down to Australia, and we did the Kimberley region of Australia, which you can still cruise to today, but that was amazing because of that experience. But I have to say, I think in terms of how fortunate we are in the UK, the Mediterranean, it never disappoints. And I think the great thing about cruising in the Mediterranean is it doesn't matter how many times you do it, how often you take a cruise in the Med, every single time you can have a completely different holiday, because pretty much every place you go to, you have the choice of beach or shopping or culture or all of these great things. It's so easy to get there. There are, if you look at Summer 21, for example, there are so many great ships to choose from. So, we're just really lucky. I also love, if you give me another 3 hours, I can talk through them. But one of the nicest sailaways I ever did actually was out of Stockholm. So as you sail out of Stockholm in the Baltic, I know, it's just incredible, through all the small islands. And then we headed to Helsinki, and I loved the Baltic as well. But we're really lucky.
Baltic,
beautiful, and it's often overlooked, but I think we're really lucky in the UK that we have all of these beautiful destinations on our doorstep, so that when we are able to sail again, which we hope it will be very soon, that we have all this rich diversity of destination to choose from. And I think, like many people, I feel as if I've been stuck in this room in my house for way too long now. So I think the opportunity to explore some of these places, I can't wait.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And also, like, you can choose whether you want to go on the river or the ocean, and that's river in itself is just an entirely different experience.
Oh, don't get me started. River is amazing.
I love river. I just love, it's that that adage, I think, that Anne Waterway sort of came up with cruising, ocean cruising takes you to countries, but river cruising takes you through them. And I did the Douro last year. That was amazing. Like, that's and the Mekong as well. It's two very different rivers. That's the other thing with river cruising.
You started now. Yeah, I love Porto. I think Porto in Portugal is one of my favorite European cities, and great jumping off place for the Douro. I love Portugal. I think, particularly because you get a bit more guaranteed sunshine than you do maybe on those Northern European rivers. But I love the French rivers as well. I really love Bordeaux. I think that's another great European city. So jumping on a river cruise there is amazing. But actually, Rhine, Danube, either is fine. I think, again, we're very lucky to be really close to those rivers. But
definitely.
And what I love about river cruising is that they are really sociable places.
It's very relaxed on river cruising, and I guess also because, you know, generally speaking, your excursions are always included. So you would have, you know, gone out and seen something and sometimes have a choice of what you can see, and then you sort of share that with your fellow guests when you're having a, you know, pre-dinner cocktail or something, or some of the activities they do on board when you are sort of, you know, sailing are really good, like, you know, port tasting in Douro and all that sort of stuff. They've got really really great experiences both on board, sure, for
Well, I think that's one thing about both ocean and river cruising, is that you can have the holiday that you want. So if you just want to kick back and relax and enjoy and, you know, do very little, then cruising gives you that great opportunity. But if you want to get involved and on rivers take the bikes out, or get involved in the fitness and wellness program, then you can. If on ocean cruising you want to go to the gym every morning, or take, you know, some of the classes that they do, or go to some of the guest lectures, for example, that's what I think that's the big thing for me about cruising, is that, you know, and even if within your traveling party there are people with different interests and different tastes, you can all go off and have your day and then meet up at dinner with, you know, a glass of wine, if that's what you like to do, and you can chat about the day that you've had and really catch up and connect again. And I think for me that's one of the joys.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is going to be my final question, because I know otherwise, you know, we'll probably end up just
we could just chat for hours.
Just, you know. So what advice would you give to someone who has perhaps never cruised before?
A great question. The obvious answer is to talk to your friendly travel agent who has all of the knowledge and expertise and access to all of the resources and learning, etc., that goes with it. So, because if you've never cruised before, it can be quite daunting, let's be honest, because there's such choice of ship and cruise line and port and destination and all of those things. So talk to your travel agent, because they inevitably know a great deal and have access to additional information as well. And then I think it's just about thinking about what kind of holiday you normally like, and then transferring that to a cruise, because, you know, if you like small hotels, then maybe think about a small ship. If you like to do lots of things, and think about cruising that has lots of activities, and so on and so forth. But, you know, take that professional advice from a travel agent is really important. And inevitably people have got friends and family who've also got some experience as well. But I think it's think about where you want to go, where do you want to explore, where in the world would excite you to visit, and then talk to your travel agent about which cruise lines and ships and itineraries you can do in that area.
Yeah, of course, because that's true. I mean, I think we've sort of touched a little bit on the diversity of cruising, but I think for someone who's never cruised before, it's very true, it can be daunting. But they also have these, perhaps you often hear them say, oh, you'd never get me on those massive 5,000 passenger ships, and actually, if that's not their thing, there's plenty of other cruise lines that, you know, cater for much smaller passenger capacities, and it's really our role as travel agent to sort of, they say, match make them with their ideal cruise ship. Because yes, we love cruising, we know it is, you know, practically the perfect holiday, it's got so much going for it, and I do genuinely believe that it is such a great concept that, like, 9 times out of 10 people will fall in love with cruising as soon as they get on board. But there is sometimes the occasion where someone might pick the wrong cruise for them, and it's a nightmare for them. And as a travel agent, it's our role to make sure that they don't have that nightmare cruise, that they find that perfect first cruise for them and subsequent cruises. And, you know, we don't want to put them off. But
well, and you know, and I think this year more than ever, I think holidays are really important. They're an important part of our lifestyle. We look forward to our holidays. We want to make sure they're the best possible holidays that we can give to our traveling companions. So actually take a little bit of time and talk to your travel agent, get the expert view and advice, and think about what kind of holiday that you're looking for. Because, you know, people who cruise will cruise again, and they'll cruise again within 12 months on average. And I think that that's really exciting. And I think it demonstrates how great the choice of a cruise holiday is. But find the right cruise for you is really important, and the travel agent can help you with that. And actually, you say about some people would prefer a big ship, some people a smaller ship, some people a different type of ship, etc. Actually, it can vary even with the same person looking at different ships with different people. So if you're there going with a group of friends, then you might want something with a lot more activities and things going on. If it's something romantic, then you might want a slightly different ship. So take that expert advice and relax and enjoy your cruise, I guess, is the best advice.
Yeah, well, excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Andy. It's been great seeing you again, albeit virtually. And thanks for sharing your, your insight, your passion for cruising, and your tip-top advice for our viewers. So, and taking part in our virtual cruise festival. So,
thank you.
Thank
you. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be invited. Yes, good luck with everything. And here's to happier sailings ahead.
Yeah, well, you'll be the star of the show. So thank you. Okay, bye.
Thanks,